The original Deep Magic was the target of quite some critique, especially on the balance side of things. So with the coming of the revised edition in the form of Deep Magic Volume 1 and Volume 2, I thought it would be a good idea to look at some spells that changed for the better. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Tarask and today I want to talk about the original Deep Magic. Some spells from the original Deep Magic that were revised into the new edition, either being the Deep Magic Volume 1 or Deep Magic Volume 2, and revised for the better. Because a lot of people had critique on this book, because some of the stuff just quite frankly was unbalanced. It didn't make sense while you were playing it. Some of the stuff was just not proofread, if that's a word, well enough. All of that stuff wasn't edited well enough, and Kobold Press kinda did an attempt to fix that, and to my opinion they did a really good job. Now before I go into 4 spells that I think changed for the better, I want to give a big shout out to my friend on Discord who goes by the name of the Blind Jedi, who basically helps me with these kinds of lists. He's responsible for like most of the work when it goes into like videos where I do this kind of stuff, so you can consider him the expert and me the messenger. The first spell that I want to talk about is one of my favorites, one that I talked about in my original review of Deep Magic, and it is Memento Mori. The one you're seeing on the screen right now is the original one on page 94 of the original book. As you can see, a necromancy cantrip, and due to a proofreading error or slip up or whatever, it became way too strong. Now the one that is in the new books is still strong, but there's just something that that just doesn't work with this one. So it has a casting time of 1 action, range self, components verbal and somatic, duration 1 round. You transform yourself into a horrifying vision of death, rotted and crawling with maggots, exuding the stench of the grave. Each creature that can see you must succeed on a charisma saving throw or be stunned until the end of your next turn. A creature that succeeds on a saving throw is immune to further castings of the spell for 24 hours. So, on the surface, this looks like a normal spell. Now, there's 2 ways they could have gone to fix this, to my opinion. First of all, they could have just made this a spell instead of a cantrip, like a 2nd level, 3rd level spell, because it is too strong for a cantrip. It is way too strong for a cantrip, because each creature that can see you. So if you're battling like 6 orcs, they can all see you. They all need to make a charisma saving throw, which is a really hard saving throw to get, or be stunned until the end of your next turn. That is an incredibly strong thing to have as a cantrip. It just doesn't make sense, right? So the way they fixed this is actually pretty good. It is now in Deep Magic Volume 2. It's still a necromancy cantrip, still casting time 1 action, and they made it a range 5 feet instead of a range self. Components verbal and somatic, duration 1 round. You transform yourself into a horrifying vision of death, rotted and crawling with maggots, exuding the stench of the grave. All of that thematic stuff remains, and I love this cantrip for its thematic stuff. I think it's a really thematic necromancy cantrip, and I think having one of these cantrips is really cool. Now it says each creature within range that can see you must succeed on a charisma saving throw or be stunned until the end of your next turn. And they changed the range to 5 feet. So now only creatures within 5 feet of you that can see you need to succeed on a charisma saving throw. It's still really hard to make a charisma saving throw, especially for like monsters like orcs and all that stuff. So you're probably going to stun a whole lot of enemies if you get yourself in the middle of the battle, or you find yourself surrounded by minions or whatever. This is a really cool cantrip to have, but it becomes more situational because most people who cast these kinds of cantrips aren't like the people who are on the front line. So it becomes a little more situational, which I think is really cool, because you are like, oh no, I'm being attacked, there's like 5 people around me, so suddenly you cast Memento Mori, you turn yourself into a horrifying vision of death, and they're like, oh, what is happening? And that is why this spell, this cantrip, now makes a lot of sense. Now, like I said, they could have changed this into a 2nd level spell or a 3rd level spell and just kept the original one, but having this as a cantrip just really makes sense if you're wanting to play a necromancer. The second spell I want to talk about is one that actually got a little bit stronger with the revision and is now in Deep Magic Volume 1, and the original one you're seeing right here is this one. 4th level Conjuration, casting time 1 round, range self, components for verbal somatic material, duration instantaneous. You harness the power of fire contained in ley lines with this spell. You create a 60-foot cone of flame. Creatures in the cone take 66 fire damage. That's a whole lot of damage to a whole lot of people, potentially, or half as much damage with a successful dexterity saving throw. You can then flow along the flames, reappearing anywhere inside the cone's area. This repositioning does not count as movement and doesn't trigger opportunity attacks. There is something very, 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 very wrong with this one. It doesn't work, and the reason for that is it says casting time 1 round, meaning that, like, normally you get in a round, you get an action, a bonus action, and a movement, right? So if you cast something that takes a round to cast, you literally cannot do anything else that round, which doesn't make sense. Especially, it's saying right here, this repositioning does not count as movement. That's just, I don't know, they just don't have to put that in here because you can't move it anyway, because it takes you a round. Unless you have 2 rounds to do something, it takes you a round to reposition. But they fixed that. They fixed that in Volume 1. Now it is the same thing, exact same spell. It is, by the way, a really cool spell. It is just still a 60-foot cone, 66 fire damage, half as much, but the repositioning doesn't count as movement. All makes sense if the casting time is 1 action. So for a completely, utterly useless spell that is super thematic, would be super cool to have as a wizard. It's a 4th level conjuration spell. You do like flames and stuff like that, and then you move along with the flames. You almost like turn into like a phoenix or whatever, and you move along with the flames, and then boom, there you are. Now you can also do another bonus action. I don't know, strike somebody with your sword, which is not a bonus action, or move around and position yourself better on the battlefield. I think this makes such an amazing amount of sense for it just to change from 1 round into 1 action. Okay, the next one is kind of funny because it kind of seems they made a little mistake leaving a sentence out from the original one into the new one. So the original one, the one you're seeing here, is Conjure Mock Animals, a 1st level conjuration spell, 1 action, 30 feet, concentration, blah, 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 blah. You summon face spirits, so a bunch of pigeons, let's say, that take the outward appearance of animals, but merely to serve as a distraction and trap for the unwary. The spell functions as the Conjure Animals, but each mock animal has only 1 hit point and deals only 1 damage on a hit, regardless of its appearance. So all fun and games right there, right? So when a mock animal is dropped to 0 hit points, it explodes in a flash of light, dealing 2d4 radiant damage to all creatures within 5 feet of it. To make matters worse, each creature that takes damage must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature is blinded for 1 round. Damage to creatures within 5 feet of it. Exploding mock animals do not deal this damage to other mock animals. So, they put the exact same spell into the new book, Conjure Mock Animals, 1st level conjuration, exactly 30 feet, all that stuff. But they left out the sentence, exploding mock animals do not deal this damage to other mock animals. Meaning that the sentence is just not there, meaning that it now does damage, right? So let's say you have 8 freaking, I don't know, pigeons around the target. I don't know what is possible with Conjure Animals. You have a bunch of pigeons, 8 of them around the target, right? Now there's 2 things that can happen. The target slaps one of the pigeons. That pigeon explodes. That pigeon does 2d4 radiant damage against the target, but also 2d4 radiant damage against the other pigeon that's next to it. Meaning that that pigeon also explodes. And that pigeon does 2d4 radiant damage against the targets that struck the first pigeon, but also against all its neighbors, giving you a chain reaction of pigeons, exploding pigeons that do 3d4 damage. 2d4 times 8 is 16d4 potential damage, and 8 times potentially Each creature with dexterity and must damage must make it on a failed save. Blinded for 1 round. So it needs to make 8 saving throws not to be blinded. And it takes 16d4 radiant damage. Now, if you want to kind of cheat your way out of this, you could even have like one pigeon attack another pigeon and just start a chain reaction. That's what happened to Conjure Muck Animals. So the next one is kind of special because I don't agree with Kobold Press changing it in the way they change it. Because Curse of Boreas is one of my favorite spells. It is an incredibly cool spell that I think is so thematic and so cool. The only problem that I always have with it is 2 problems basically. It is too low level and its range is much too high. It's a 6th level transmutation and its range is 100 freaking feet. You designate a creature within range that you can see. If the target fails a charisma saving throw, it and its equipment are frozen solid, becoming an inert statue of ice. The creature is effectively paralyzed, but mental activity does not cease, and signs of life are detectable. The creature still breathes and its heart continues to beat, though both acts are almost imperceptible. If the ice statue is broken or damaged while frozen, the creature will have matching damage or injury when returned to its original state. Dispel magic cannot end the spell, but it can allow the target to speak for a number of rounds equal to the spell slots used. Great restoration or more potent magic is needed to free a creature from the ice. I think this is so cool, and I will talk about the change in a minute, because they change it into a completely different spell. It doesn't do this anymore. So with the new books, there isn't a way to do this. So the only thing that I would do to this spell is, first of all, the range should be touch, because you need to be dedicated enough in order to do this kind of stuff to somebody. If you want to turn somebody into a statue of ice almost permanently, you're going to be you have to be dedicated enough to do it, right? Also, 6th level, it's pretty high level, but it's not high level enough for this kind of stuff for me. I would make this 7th, 8th level. I don't know, I'd have to compare it with like other spells in order to like really find out what level its sweet spot would be, but 6 is just too low for me personally. Especially it being like a charisma saving throw that like almost everybody fails, right? So, yeah, I think changing those 2 things, just like the balance of this spell, would still be an amazing spell. Turning somebody in a statue of ice permanently is just incredibly cool, and I don't like that they've taken that out, because Curse of Boreas in Deep Magic Volume 1 is now a completely different spell. 1 action, range self, 60-foot cone. It's now a 60-foot cone spell. Concentration up to 1 minute, and it does something completely different. A whisper of freezing wind west from your lips in a 60-foot cone. Each creature in the area must make a charisma saving throw, taking 4d8 cold damage and being restrained on a failed save, or half as much damage with no additional effect on a successful one. A creature restrained by the spell takes 2d8 cold damage at the end of each of its turns, and then must make another charisma saving throw. It has advantage on this saving throw if it has taken any fire damage since the end of its last turn. If it successfully saves against the spell 3 times, the spell ends for it. If it fails its save 3 times, it is shrouded in ice and restrained for 10 minutes. Successes and failures don't need to be consecutive. Keep track of blah, 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 blah. So, this spell is a completely different spell. It is still a cool spell. Curse of Boreas, the new edition, is a 6th level transmutation, 1 action spell. It's an incredibly cool area of effect, crowd control type spell that is themed towards winter and ice. But it's a different spell. So for me, personally, I would have loved them changing the balance of the original one, putting that in new books, and then making a new spell like Curse of Boreas Volume 2 or whatever, I don't know, give it a new name. Whisper of Boreas, for example, because it's basically a Whisper of Boreas, and make that a 6th level transmutation, which kind of is like the lower level prequel to the one that you really want, right? That would have been really cool. You could have like a Curse of Boreas and the Whisper of Boreas. That's the way I would have liked seeing it, and that's basically also the way that I'm doing it. For me, my players are absolutely allowed to still take the original Curse of Boreas as a spell. It's just going to be a 7th level transmutation probably, and it's going to be range touch. If they want it that way, they can have it. If they want the new Curse of Boreas, which I'm calling the Whisper of Boreas, they can have that one as well. So whether or not you agree with some of the changes they made from the original Deep Magic, we can say that Kobold Press are listening to their community and they're actually making changes from the books that got a little bit of critique, which makes me very happy. Even if I don't agree with like one spell that got changed because it became a completely different spell, I don't care that I don't agree with it, because I like Kobold Press actually taking a second look at their own content and fixing it to the best of their ability. I just think that one spell needed to remain in there and needed to be balanced in another way. Other than that, I think most of the stuff that is revisited for the better. And until next video, bye bye.